podcast. I'm your host, Colby Conway, at Colby R. Conway on X. And with me, as always, my co-host, partner in crime here for this whole fantasy baseball season, Matt Selz, at the Selz Man on X. Matt, the baseball season is winding down, but we are arguably in the most important time for fantasy managers. So if you or anyone listening is in fantasy baseball playoffs, best of luck. Let us know if there's any questions in the Discord. But Matt, how are you?
I'm good. We got a lot of stuff happening here at FA. Obviously, week 1 of the NFL season just got underway, except for maybe the Giants. They didn't seem to show up very well. And we got NASCAR that I'm still covering. We got baseball I'm still covering. So lots going on in the FA universe. It's a busy time of year for us here. And let's face it, hockey and NBA aren't that far off either.
Yep. Rumor has it Daniel Jones is still running from the Dallas front seven as we speak right now.
Do we hear a Daniel Jones, I'm seeing ghosts?
No, but we hear Geno Smith yelling as Aaron Donald bearing down on him right down the middle.
Oh my God.
of the offensive line.
To be fair, I'd be saying the same thing too if Aaron Donald was running after me.
Oh, I have no problem with what he said. I agree. I'd be saying something similar, with maybe a couple more expletives and choice words in the in the midst of it. But yeah, I would definitely be saying something similar. As much as Daniel Jones is running away from the Dallas Cowboys front seven, or was running away last night, Matt, with the same urgency, should fantasy baseball managers be running to the waiver wire or the free agency to pick up Chicago prospect Pete Crow-Armstrong?
Yeah, I'm going to hammer this home a little bit later in the show, but yes, he is their top prospect. He was gotten in return for who was the rental the Cubs traded to the Mets? I'm blanking now on the return that the Mets got in that deal. But yes, he was traded to the Cubs a couple of years ago, and he's been doing in their minors and just having himself a season this year. So he's quite an impressive outfield prospect. He's got pop, he's got speed, he's going to hit for a decent average, and his defense is spectacular. So the Cubs are going to give him full run of the outfield here down the stretch because they are in the heat of an NL wild card race. And if the Brewers fall off, maybe the Cubs can catch them, but they need a lot to go right to win the NL Central. So it's more so a wild card spot that they're looking to lock up here.
Crow-Armstrong, selected by the Mets, the number 19 overall pick back in 2020. He was the headline prospect in the 2021 trade, sending Javier Baez and Trevor Williams from Chicago to New York.
Yep, for like 2 months.
Yep, look at that. Yeah. And then also, too, I agree with you. I think he's one to probably pick up, which I'll let you kind of get into a little bit more about him a little bit later on. But hard to complain. First couple games of his career, Coors Field.
Correct.
No biggie. Then gets Arizona and then Pirates pitching. And then guess what? Then he gets Colorado pitching in his home park.
Yeah, that's a pretty tasty way to start your career. We'll talk about it a little bit here, but the power is still kind of burgeoning for him. He hasn't fully figured his power stroke out this year across AA and AAA. In just over 100 games, he's got 20 homers and 37 steals with about a 275 or so average. So, you'll take it, man. If you're getting, I'm not saying he's going to be a 20-30 outfielder. In the majors, he could easily steal 30 bags. He's got plus speed. The power is still coming. He's still finding, he's 21 years old, guys. So, the power is coming. He's got to figure out how to, produce launch angle in games. It's one thing to work on it in the batting cage. It's an entirely different thing to do it in game. So I would say his game power right now is probably average, but his raw power is above average. So if he can get his game power to his raw power, then we'll see about 25 homers a year from him. The hit tool, there's a little bit more swing and miss there than you might like, but if he's producing in the counting stats, you're not really going to mind it.
And then down the stretch here, I mean, you got to think he's playing damn near every day, right? You'd have to think.
Yeah.
Pretty
I
darn.
mean, you're not going to call a guy up at this point and just play him sparsely. I mean, I know the minor league seasons are wrapping up. We saw the low minors, I think, wrap up yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, which would be Sunday. But it's not like there's anybody really holding down the fort here in the outfield. You know, sure, Cody Bellinger's been great. Saya's been Saya, a little bit up and down. Ian Happ, a lot of power. Not sure a whole lot else. So I think they will find a place to play him. You could give Jamer some days off in the DH spot, move Ian Happ there or Saya there. But yeah, I would assume that they are calling him up to give him as much run as possible. You could also replace Mike Tauchman in center field.
Yeah. And I mean, they're bringing him up because when you look at it, I mean, they're only a handful of games behind Milwaukee, but they're only 2.5 up on the last wild card spot, too.
Correct.
Like,
There's like 6 teams separated by like 5 games in the NL wild card right now.
this doesn't exactly seem like, yeah, he's a top prospect. We're going to bring him up and make sure he's ready for 2024. I think it's more of like, hey, we're going to bring this top prospect up because we're in the thick of things right now and we need help.
Correct.
And I mean, it's not necessarily that they need help, but it's just we want to put the best foot forward, and he is that best foot. So we'll put him
Correct.
forward.
If you replace Mike Tauchman with Pete Crow-Armstrong, not only does your defense get better, you get added speed at the top of the lineup, right? Which then helps things for guys like Cody Bellinger and Ian Happ and, the rest of your Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson. Helps everybody in the middle of your lineup have a shot to be a run producer and just get a jump on, opposing pitchers there. Because speed plays, we've seen it, right? It's the one thing you can't coach. It's the one thing that annoys the ever-loving daylights out of pitchers is speed on the bases because it distracts them.
Yep. And just looking at his minor league numbers this year, 247 against lefties. So he was a bit better against righties. Maybe the Cubs try to protect him a little bit against lefties. But at this point, like with what he brings with his glove, you just got to play him every day.
Correct.
He's too good. It's not like it's he's a below average defender. So we can actually get an upgrade there. Like, I don't think you're upgrading defensively from him. So I would let him just hit.
No, he's a Gold Glove caliber defender, which is going to keep him on the field and let his bat get time to see more pitches and get more used to the majors. So,
and despite a 247 average against lefties in the minors here, still a very respectable 840 OPS. Very respectable. So
when he's making contact, it's doing damage against lefties. It's just not making contact as often as we might like.
Quantity will come. That will come with time. But
plus, his mom was also the mom in his actual real life mom was the mom in Little Big League. We remember that mid-90s baseball movie.
Nope.
It's a 13-year-old kid managing the Twins.
Little Big League indeed. Little Big League indeed. Matt, a couple injuries got to touch on here. Some of the bigger ones. What comes up must come down, I guess. And when you look in New York, Jasson Dominguez, torn UCL going for Tommy John. Seems some are interesting reports. Like if he's on like the 6-month timetable, he could be ready early 2024. But if it's the 9 to 10 month, it's the back end of 2024. I mean, this is pretty much just a wait and see, right? I mean, the Martian is human, I guess is the headline that you can do here. I hate that we have to come to that, but I mean,
the Yankees can't have nice things.
Correct. I mean, what do we make of this? Like any guesses right now to when he returns is pure speculation. We don't know how the arm's going to hang up, what the rehab plan is going to be like. We watched Bryce Harper do it, but do you think the Yankees may have some concerns? Because if I'm not mistaken, Harper had a pretty slow burn getting back into things. So like, what do we make of this? What is there to do? Or are we pretty much just sitting here and being like, well, let's wait till March and see what the reports are and kind of handle it from there? I think that's all we really can do right now.
I mean, basically, right? Is it good news that he's having it sooner rather than later? Sure. It takes, anytime you can have surgery sooner, helps your return come sooner, even with the same time frame. Bryce Harper, I think set the whatever record, if we want to count it as that, for the fastest return for a position player
Mhm.
from Tommy John. But they DH'd him for a while, right? He was still playing down the stretch. And now they've put him at first base so he doesn't have to throw. So what do you do with, like, are you going to bring Jasson Dominguez back as a guy who doesn't have to throw and DH him? Because if you're DHing him, then what are you doing with Giancarlo Stanton? And if you're putting him at first, then what are you doing with Anthony Rizzo and then by proxy Giancarlo Stanton? So we'll have to see. I'm not going to speculate, but I would imagine that he's closer to second half of next year before we see him.
And when
Right?
when Harper returned, I mean, he did hit 328 in his first 15 games, so I guess it wasn't like an overly slow burn, but there
No,
was some rust. He had a
defensively
27%
though.
strikeout rate. Like he was
Right.
still striking out more than what he normally did. So there's definitely an adjustment.
Right. Also, defensively, they're still not letting him throw. He's still not playing the outfield. Right. So even if we take we open the show with week 1. Brock Purdy came back from a torn UCL in 6 months and was throwing the ball in week 1 for the 49ers. Could we see that in 6 months down the road? He's throwing? Maybe, but I'd also say that if he's playing outfield, you got to take more of a pitching angle with it than just swinging a bat because you're throwing a ball. I mean, if he's playing outfield, you got to throw the ball, 300 something feet to be able to get guys out at home?
Mhm.
You're throwing it an entire football field. So I would assume that it's probably second half of next year before we see Jasson Dominguez.
And on top with the outfielders, think about it too. If he's going to make his return, they get 5 or 6 throws in between innings, just with the left fielder, or depending if they're the home team or away team, someone will come in off the bench. He may not. He'll get he'll get a couple throws. Nothing much happens. Next inning gets a couple throws. Nothing happens. Gets a couple throws, and then it's a max effort throw to a base.
Not to mention you're swinging in between 3 or 4. Like, it's just a lot of stop and start, which is not great for a joint that's recovering from being surgically repaired.
Yep, I would agree. We'll have to see what happens with him. Luis Severino also went to the injured list, but he was pitching a little bit better of late. But overall, this may be a net positive for New York. Maybe
I think it's addition by subtraction, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like,
anything's
got to be better than like the last 3 of their starters.
Yeah. Severino, maybe the hope is that stuff was lingering. He couldn't get right. I don't think that's the case. I just think he was off this year. 6.65 ERA across 18 starts, 19 total appearances with a 5.92 xERA and a 6.15 whip for Severino after being, excellent in 2022.
Yep.
That is the state of the New York Yankees in a nutshell. The Angels will angel. And now Luis Rengifo heads to the IL, who had been arguably one of their better hitters of late, hitting for what good average. Nice little pickup for fantasy baseball managers off in free agency as well. But he's now is done for the year with a biceps issue. What is up with the Angels? Like,
he didn't even get on the field. Like, he hurt himself in the warm up, like taking, in the batter circle before he even came into the game. This was in the first inning. You got to fire your training staff, right? Like,
you would think.
Or you got to have a seance at Angel Stadium. One of, perhaps both, have to happen. I've seen a ton of tweets this week. This is how it started. This is how it's going. Angels edition. And the list of players that are injured for the Angels is insane. Like, we've been talking all year about how good the rotation is for the Rays that's on the IL. It's an American League All-Star team that's on the IL for the Angels, and that doesn't even include Shohei Ohtani, who's technically not been on the IL this whole time. They've just been like, maybe he'll play, maybe he won't, maybe he'll play today, maybe he won't. I don't know. Like, you got to fire your entire training staff, right? Like,
it's something to consider. Right now, I'm looking here at roster resource, and the lineup they have right there, Nolan
It's
Schanuel,
so
who's missed the
gross.
last couple of games with the injury. Otani's obviously missed. Drury, Moustakas, Ohapi, Moniak, who's been injured the past couple of days. Grichuk, Brett Phillips, and Zach Neto, who's been on IL, supposedly might be coming off here. And then you go down to their little injured section. You see CJ Cron, Anthony Rendon, Gio Urshela, Luis Rengifo, Joe Adell, Mike Trout, and Taylor Ward.
And yeah, there's pitchers that have been injured too.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not great. And now there was news on Sunday that the Angels would be willing to trade Mike Trout if he asks for one.
I did see that.
Which, to be fair, I think is doing right by Mike Trout.
I think so too. But
Right, like, it sucks.
Can't help the Otani signing though.
Well, there's also news that leaked that Otani would prefer to sign with a winner rather than stay on the West Coast. Like, winning trumps him playing closer to Japan.
Right.
Because they haven't had a winning season since like 2015, I think. The entire time he's been there, they haven't had a winning season. Trout's only made the playoffs one time in his entire Angels career.
Mm-hmm.
So part of me is like, well, they're doing right by Mike Trout, right? You've had him in career. You want to let the guy have a shot to win, probably get a pretty decent haul for him because he's still under contract for like 7 more years or an obscene amount of time. So we'll see. I don't know that Mike Trout's going to ask for a trade. Maybe he does. Maybe he wants to go back closer to home, which, by the way, he's from southern New Jersey. So I don't know, but that's certainly interesting news because at this point, if you're the Angels, you're like, it's a 5-year rebuild with or without him.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Otani. So may as well let the guy have a shot at going somewhere to win, I guess.
All right, so let's have some fun with this. No harm, no foul. Just off the Selz man on X's brain. Assuming, all right, I'm going to take the caveat out of it. Come April 1st of 2024, are Mike Trout and Shohei Otani on the Angels roster? Otani might be hurt and not playing. I'm going for roster. Are Trout and Otani on the Angels roster? That's an and, not an or, an and.
No.
I love it.
I think Otani's gone. I really do. Like, I've been the biggest proponent for, well, the Angels might be keeping him. I don't know how you convince him to stay at this point. Right? Like, they gave it their all. They did. I mean, they made some trades. I'm not going to say that they've worked out because clearly they didn't. They put everybody on waivers who they traded for. But in 7 years of being with the team, they haven't proven they can put together a competent winning team, whether that be the GM being terrible and now with the Mets and still not being able to put together a competent winning team. I don't know. But if you're Otani, I can't blame him for leaving. At this point, I would never blame a guy for searching for a winning situation. And aside from like maybe one good pick every 3 years, the Angels haven't really had very good drafts. I mean, sure, they've got Neto, who's also injured, and Schanuel the last 2 years. Still haven't been able to develop pitching. So, do I think they move Trout right away, like this offseason? No, I don't think so. Do I think it may happen at the deadline next year? Yeah.
Could be.
If he's healthy and he gets off to a Mike Trout start,
why not?
I think you see the guy moved, and I think somebody gives up their entire farm system.
I could see, especially someone that wants that title and thinks he's that missing piece. Why the heck not? Yep. They like to pay people. They've shown it. They'll do it.
They now have a farm system they could trade. And, by the way, their GM, pretty familiar with Mike Trout.
Sure is. And back to Rengifo, just want to throw it out there. from August 1st on, he was slashing 333, 382, 545 with a 151 WRC plus. But because the Angels will Angel, despite his 6 home runs and 13 total extra base hits, he only had 16 runs scored and 18 RBI.
Yeah.
Despite all of that. Last one for you.
That's not the weirdest injury of the week, though.
No, it is not.
Noelvi Marte might hold that. Who broke his nose because he got hit in the face during warm-up pitches by Ellie De La Cruz.
Yep. Saw the video.
Threw it without going, hey, you watching?
Yep. Hey, lesson for all the kids out there.
Make sure the people are looking.
Make sure the people are looking. Do you think we see Josh Jung back next week? It sounds like he could be back as soon as I believe it's this week. Next week. It's end of the week. It's when the Cleveland series. I'll look up when it is, but I loved the quote that they saw him swinging and they were like, whoa. Like, okay, cool. I mean, was he in pain? Was he not? Like, I don't care if he's hitting the ball hard. If it hurts every time he does it, they're not going to rush him back. But it seems like the return is sooner than farther away for Josh Jung. We know thumb issues can be a bit tricky when they come back. What do you expect his impact to be when he comes back? Still hits for a solid average, but maybe the power sapped a little bit?
Yeah, maybe not quite a lot of power. Going to be hard to tell, obviously, because if he comes back at the end of this week, there's like 2.5 weeks left in the MLB season. At that point, if it's the beginning of next week, less time, right? So we're talking smaller sample sizes, but they would love to get that bat back in their lineup. They've been stumbling at this point to the point where they, I think earlier this weekend, were out of the wild card for like they're teetering at this point. They went from leading the division to fighting for the third wild card spot, basically. So yeah, they're going to need some help. Toronto's coming. They're holding them off. Houston is still there. Seattle, like that whole AL West thing, every day the standings seem to change between those top 3 teams. So yeah, if you've got Josh Jung and he's coming back, I'm playing him. You've got no shot, like no reason not to. I think the batting average will be fine. We might see a drop in homers. But if he's in there, I'm playing him.
Since Jung left the lineup, third base position for Texas, 301 OBP, 314 WOBA, 96 WRC plus. So a little bit below league average, but Jung comes back. That will be quite the benefit there. Just want to let everyone know that we have been doing 2 episodes a week for the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Baseball podcast. Down the stretch here, we are going to drop it to one episode a week. So this will be the lone edition for this week. So, of course, if you are in the fantasy baseball playoffs, we want to give you some guys that you can go pick up or look to pick up to help your team here in the most crucial part of the season. So I'll give you mine, waiver wire pickup. It's going to be Ryan Pepiot of the Dodgers. He's been pitching very, very well of late, given all of the issues in the Dodgers rotation that we may not say, but namely that Walker Buehler is not going to come back. So that's one question mark removed from this scenario.
Elias isn't coming back either for an entirely different.
I wasn't going to say it. You said it, but
he's not coming back.
He's on administrative leave.
Yeah, not great.
So Pepiot's going to rejoin that, or he's going to join that rotation. He's made 2 starts, 12 shutout innings. A low strikeout ceiling does hurt his overall fantasy output. I understand that, but there is some room for optimism, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But look to Ryan Pepiot in your leagues if you need some pitching help. And if you need some hitting help, Matt thinks that you should pick up
Pete Crow-Armstrong.
We talked about him.
We did. He's pretty good at hitting baseballs, right? Mm-hmm. Top prospect in a pretty good Cubs system, by the way. If you check out my latest top 400, it's a pretty deep system. It's like a top 5 in baseball. So to be number 1 there, pretty good. He's got good skills at hitting baseballs very far, right? At his best, which we're not going to see this year. Obviously, he's coming up with 2.5 weeks left in the season. But at his best, could he be a 25-30 outfielder? Yes. He gets very favorable pitching down the stretch here, starting in cores, and then the Pirates haven't exactly stopped anybody from hitting baseballs. He gets Colorado again. The NL Central, basically half those teams gave up a while ago. I'm sure he's going to face Adam Wainwright at some point. Even if he's not facing the Cardinals, I'm sure he still gets to face Adam Wainwright. Yeah, I'd pick him up. We could all use batting help at this point. Outfield is kind of thinning out at this point in the season, so go snag him.
And then, of course, we will end it here. Everyone's favorite game show, name that player. So for player one, I actually kind of already talked about him a little bit, so I'm actually going to let the cat out of the bag here, but it is Ryan Pepio, the guy that I just mentioned, who's my waiver wire pickup. Matt, kind of just, I'm going to throw this tidbit or a factoid at you. So I said 12 shutout innings over his last 2 starts. He only has 6 strikeouts across those 12 innings of work. However, he's got a swing rate, if you look on Fangraphs, so swings outside of the zone of 38% with a 10.1% swinging strike rate. Am I foolish to think that those numbers, they do indicate some potential optimism for some added strikeouts in some good matchups? Like a double-digit swinging strike rate is pretty good.
Yes.
Like you can take that and swings outside of the zone over or right around 38%. That's also a pretty hardy number. I know it doesn't tell the full story, but those are 2 numbers that you can look at and say, hey, is he going to go out there and strike out double-digit guys? No, that's not his game. But he can get closer to a strikeout per inning than what we're seeing right now.
Agreed. I think he gets caught nibbling a little bit too much, or he should go after guys early in the count and then get them with, set up a pitch on the outer half and let it just, bait the hitter into swinging, basically, I think would help him out. But he's got stuff that can strike people out. Like he was close to a strikeout per inning in the upper minors. Mm-hmm. So it's more about, and maybe he's got to work with Will Smith a little bit on, pitch sequencing. Maybe Will Smith wants him to sequence this way, and his stuff sets up better a different way. But yeah, he's got stuff that could get him closer to a strikeout per inning. Especially if you're seeing, like, if he's getting guys swinging out of the zone, that tells me it's an approach, and he's nibbling a little too early, so that by the time he gets to a strikeout count, they're not going to swing his stuff out of the zone because you haven't set up the hitter to bait him properly.
Yep, and this year he's got his changeup and slider both at 30% or higher in the whiff rate department. So we'll like that as well. Matt, last one here before we wrap up the episode. NL West outfielder. I've been limited to under 50 games this year, which hasn't been great as I was signed to a 3-year, $40+ million deal this offseason. However, I may be starting to come on a bit just when fantasy managers need me the most, as I'm slashing 400, 455, 1,200 with 4 extra base hits, 2 of which are home runs. Over my last 3 games and in the month of September, I have a 16.7% barrel rate and a 50% hard hit rate. Matt, what outfielder am I from the National League West?
You would be Mitch Haniger, who is also helping his team try to punch a ticket to the postseason again.
I am indeed. Is there any fantasy potential to be had here? I know he's missed a lot of time to injury this year. He's been in and out of the lineup, but he's hitting the ball hard right now, and right now is what matters.
Yep. It's what have you done for me lately time, and he's done quite a lot for us lately. So I'd keep playing him till he cools off. Is he going to cool off? Probably, because his stat line right now is unsustainable given everything we know about Mitch Haniger. But right now you got to roll with him, and the Giants certainly are going to, because they are in an absolute battle for that NL wild card spot. I think they are a game and a half out as of last night, or a game out of last night, like right behind the Marlins, who I think were a half game out, and the Diamondbacks are holding the last spot. And I'm sticking to my early July prediction, by the way, that I said that the Diamondbacks would make the playoffs.
I think you should.
When they were in the middle of losing every possible game in July.
I think you should stick with it. But
I am. I'm not changing now. Now they're in, man. Why would I change now?
Absolutely. Well, head over to fantasyalarm.com. If you're not an all-pro subscriber, it looks like our free 7-day trial is still going, so that'll get you access to everything that you need, including some stuff for week 2 of the NFL season and all the baseball content we have here down the fantasy baseball stretch. Give me a follow on X at Colby R. Conway, Matt Selz at the Selzman, and we will see you next week with the next edition of the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Baseball Podcast.